There are a lot of tropes in anime and manga and fiction in general. And I think one that I've mentioned before that I don't think people are ever going to get tired of is when the main character gets their first real power up form and just decides to go in raw and just give people, like whoever they're fighting, the works. I mean, I just some of the ones I know off the top of my head. The first time Natsu goes into Dragon Force against Jalal. First time that Asta gets his black form against Ladros. The first time that Deku gets that blue aura 100% against Overhaul. It's just satisfying when you have these characters, and even though like instances of like they're strong, they're capable of doing stuff, of just getting to see them be an absolute powerhouse is awesome. I love it. It's one of those things that I'm never gonna like get tired of, just seeing the first time a character just gets to really pop off and go in heavy. Like you get parts where they get to be pretty powerful, pretty intimidating, but there's a whole different aura around them than a scenario like this. Again, look at any of those characters in times when they've beaten people, defeated an enemy, and then reread the part where they get their first like power up, and then they just dominate. And even if it's like a short fight at that point, it's just badass, and it always looks great. You're gonna get like you're gonna get some sick spread pages, cool new attacks. It's just always gonna be fun. Anyway, the chapter starts out, as we know. Well, first off, there was some really good color pages, just a bunch of them. Don't remember the last time I saw Hiroshima like do this many in a row, if at all. I can't. Like, I know he's done like a lot of crazy like back-to-back color spreads and lots of stuff, but like this was multiple, and it was all in this weird like magazine style too. I really liked it. I thought it was good. All them Eden girls are just a real snack. Anyway. Gotta get distracted. Can't get distracted. I can't get distracted from the delights of, goddamn, these old treat girls. Anyway, so chapter starts out just as we were left off. Like Drac and Joe has lost control because of them destroying his machine. He's gotten like all this forced energy into his body, and it caused him to pretty much mutate into this horrific, like pretty much this big slimy like leech parasite, like space parasite like creature. And all the characters are scrambling around to try and get off the belly goer. And from the instance of like the last chapter, Shiki like went into this form. I was very curious if it was gonna be his overdrive or something completely different. And my theory was the fact that that his ether lines were purple, like they're canonically as we saw purple, but also like because we know that they're green in some of the art, but I guess at this point they turn purple, which is fine with me. I think it looks cool. I'm hoping it may be like it's purple with the white hair, but maybe some of like the aura is green, like maybe some of the energy coming off it. I don't know. I'd like the green, but as I've said many times, I think the purple's just to me is a color that's always associated with gravity manipulation. I don't know. I've seen it in a lot of fictions that just reinforce my belief behind that. I think there's always like a color coding when it comes to certain powers. I mean, you don't have to do it, but I feel like there's just some that always go with it. But anyway, like Shiki's got this form. He's got his ether gear, yeah, his ether gear overdrive form, and I like that it alters his outfit too. And instead of just giving him like these weird ether horns and like this like layer over him, I'm guessing it'll extend further, and eventually he'll get like a full transformation. This is probably just going to be a partial version, but. Like Drac and Joe in this big monstrous form goes to attack. Shiki blocks it, and then with his other arm while just kind of getting it up. Like he's pretty much just from the arm blocking while just kind of like keeping his power on Drac and Joe is just starting to put enough gravity out that's like ripping area around him all like out of place and just floating up. He's got this large AoE of gravity, and like they're talking about how like it's all kind of flowing around him, almost like he's a black hole. And just before people get crazy, obviously that doesn't mean he is a black hole. It's just a really cool way to describe him, and it does look badass. And I'd be very curious to know if Hiroshima goes towards that crazy like absurdity of like a black hole. I mean, he's already done one with Blue Note. It would just really depend on like if he just has like, hey, it's essentially kind of like this Hack's little ball. Sort of like, Blue Notes or Yamis, or if he just goes straight science fiction, like full black hole. Either way, Personally, to me, like I think wormholes would be cooler because I like the mobility more for Shiki, just because that's been the big emphasis on his power. That is like way more emphasis, like it's way more displayed of his level of mobility than Haru or Natsu. That's always like it since the start. That's been like Shiki's thing. I think wormholes would be a lot cooler if he's got like little portals to jump through. Anyway, I mentioned it before. It's just something I just wanted to rant about before people start running on the power level stuff, but. We also knew that using the Blaze satellite that Drac and Joe stole from Kurenai, he's like charging it up to shoot up Blue Garn to destroy it, and like the team that's on the Ether Gear ship is like, we need to take it out, we need to do something about it. They kind of like shoot these little shoot their turrets at it. It's got like a force field, and they're like, all right, well, we have to use the main cannon. Like the weapon Starbringer. It's like this, big cannon that comes out the mouth. So I'm wondering if this is their main cannon. Like, what's the difference going to be between that and their Ethereon like weapon? Because not only do we know it existed, it was brought up in the Heroes storyline and that whole thing. But in that one, it was played off like they already knew what it was. So I'm very curious to know like where Hiromashima is going to take that. Like if it's some form of different power than just being like a big powerful cannon. I don't know, but. After that point, like Witch is like, all right, we need to kind of like compensate for some of the power missing, because Hermit brings up like that it's not even at half charge. So like, okay, we're gonna pretty much plug ourselves in and make up for the remaining portions. They're gonna use their own ether in order to power up. So I'm guessing that after this arc, they're gonna need like a waiting period. They're gonna probably have to rest because they're gonna all need to be at full power in order to go through Dragon Falls. Shiki is doing his thing. Rebecca and Amora are getting attacked by like the weird, like familiar versions of Drac and Joe. These like monstrous, like little face versions, like just kind of like trying to attack them and absorb them with their tentacles. To which Rebecca's got her guns, decides to like start shooting them up, and you get this really cool. Even though if it's not emphasized, like it's like a third or fourth of a page. The whole part where Homura and Rebecca are just doing this cool combo where Homura's kind of flipping over her and they're both getting in their attack positions. I thought that was just cool in general. I like that. I like that they got like a short little spotlight, even if it's not going to be the main point of the chapter. Because like really, like obviously Shiki is the main focus, and then right after that you have the stuff going on with the ship and the satellite blaze cannon. But I like the fact that Homura and Rebecca got something. Wise didn't need to really do anything because he was already there. I'm actually very curious of what Hiromashima's gonna do with Drac and Joe and like the whole Wise thing further, because he brought this up, but it wasn't like a main focus of what was going on in this fight. Like obviously it's important, like it's in his backstory, but it wasn't like a big drawn thing that was like kind of tied further into it. I believe that it could easily go with what some of the people are talking about. I've seen some people discuss, because obviously time travel is like a big thing in the series, that maybe Drac and Joe will run into him again at some form of like planet that's being, time shenanigans, something with a chronophage, and maybe they run into a younger Drac and Joe, and it'll be used more in that regards of like Wise dealing with Drac and Joe before, like in a state of Drac and Joe maybe before he turns evil, but having still beef with him. I think that would be pretty neat to see and like where that would go. But Shiki is like still combating Drac and Joe. Looks like he's taken a little bit of damage. Like he's just a little bit kind of scuffed, but we already knew he was like that beforehand, so it's nothing really that crazy. But it's still seemingly putting some strain on him. Like he's sweating from using his attack. It's not as like no diff, but he's still like clearly overpowering Drac and Joe. Like he's just pushing his gravity up and just uses like the force to just completely destroy one of his arms. Meanwhile, they have the Starbringer cannon charged up, shoots, goes right through the force field, destroys the satellite blaze cannon before it's able to get the attack off. I'm kind of glad they were able to do it before there was something like, oh, we have to like match it shot for shot, and then like it's like people like 50% of that cannon can like match some destroy a planet. I don't want to deal with power level craziness currently in Eden Zero. I'm more interested in like I've already mentioned, I'm more interested in some of like the crazier like abilities rather than just seeing like crazy power levels at the moment. We'll get to crazy power levels. That's not what I'm focused on right now. I want to see more of like crazy ether gears, because we still haven't gotten a lot really when you think about it. And even some of the like outside of Drac and Joe's and Wise's, we haven't seen like a lot of like real broken ones. Obviously, Shiki's is good. Like, Shiki's is a really good power, but it's not... I mean, it'll be way more broken, I think, later on. It has the base fact of its gravity. It's really good. But, like, in a space series, like, real-time machine reconfiguring is obviously very good, as well as, like, alchemy, obviously, is shown really good. We'll get some more probably crazy ones when, like, some bigger characters show up, like Justice, maybe more of the Erasion Ace Galactica. I'm still hoping that, like, it's going to be more focused on the crazy abilities in the fights, and then, like, the large power level stuff is all going to be in the ships. I don't want the ships to fall out of relevancy. That's something that I worry about, and I am hoping it stays in there. And, again, it's something that I think will lower a little bit of some of the traits of the series if the ships don't have much value, and they're just kind of, like, going from point A to B. I like that the ships all are going to be like heavily armored and heavily kind of just armed, and they're going to have a lot of capabilities that maybe is beyond like what the characters are at. Maybe like end of series, I don't want it just to be like giant power up jump, and then like the ships are it's like, well, what's the point of them? Anyway, back to actually the stuff. Not me worrying that the ships won't be as important. I have my confidence in Hiroshima. He's a smart dude. But anyway, you got Drac and Joe keep going up, and here's where things I think got really interesting, because this is something I didn't expect when it came to this chapter. I figured that, yeah, Shiki was going to run a train on Drac and Joe. They were going to end up taking out the satellite cannon at some point. Who knows how it was going to be. I thought it maybe have been like Shiki uses his gravity to like turn it into like maybe like a different direction, and it shoots into like the void of space, hits nothing or something. But this was very unexpected. So when it comes to the characters generally, like in a lot of series, they usually have some form of hacks. And especially that's what's one of the things Hiromishima's always really liked, is like characters will have some like broken power, some like weird thing to their abilities. Like Haru had a couple, but that's because Haru's thing was like he's got swords with different abilities. But for the most part, when it came to like hacks, he had Rune Save. That was probably his most like utility based, like largest useful weapon to have. Not obviously his fire can burn magic. Whereas, and then obviously, I don't need to get a discussion of his Savage Dragon Fire crazy brokenness of that, but generally the main thing is burn magic. That's one of the things that they can do, and obviously like burn curses and stuff. But you know what I mean. Curses in the fact that he could burn abilities. Curses. Anyway, you know what I mean. Burn magic. It's very useful. He has something that is pretty much makes him, on top of being a very powerful Dragon Slayer, he's in a way a degree of anti-mage in some aspect, but when it comes to Shiki, there was the question of what is Shiki's hacks going to be? What is Shiki's thing going to be that's like the trait of his power, that instead of just like the base attribute, it's going to be like it's going to be something that you always got to look out for. And so one thing we knew about Shiki that was hinted, but we don't know the exact details of, was Shiki was essentially going to have some form of like tie into the Cat Leaper ability. And it seems like what it's going to be is Shiki can affect memories, and the fact that his, like, you know, quote unquote gravitational pull can pull memories from people. And it seems to be that it doesn't just include people like directly in front of him, because like we see Drac and Joe's flashback of like when he's a kid and he's part of some weird like child experiment group, which keep noting that, because I bet that's going to come at something important later. Obviously this is some strange research group that is experimenting on kids. I think it's gotta be like later in the series that ties back to it. Like maybe they'll go there when Drac and Joe, and time travel and stuff, and run into them. Who knows? But he's seeing Drac and Joe's story of like these guinea pig children. Well, not literally guinea pig, science experiments that people are just apparently perfectly fine with using on children. And they're like, we only live to be 15. Drac and Joe does not want to die so early. He wants to grow up to be decades. He finds a book on alchemy and like learns of like, well, maybe I can transfer other people's life into mine so I can live longer. And he's like, well, maybe I could make some friends. Doesn't look like he got along with the other kids, which is nice. I like that he's got like this story, like at some point that he wanted to make friends. And I'm betting that the gap between that and what we saw with Drac and Joe is gonna have something to do with maybe these other children. Like, I don't know if you could hear my cat going crazy in the background, but anyway, maybe it'll have something to do with having to like take life force from other people in order for his own survival, and he had to abandon the idea of having friends in order to keep himself alive or something like that, which would be like a really dark twist in a character that we know like he's clearly doesn't like he's not a very friendship heavy guy, but clearly it started at some point you want to make a lot of friends. I think it would be interesting for that twist if it came down to something like that, where it was this complete and utter like basic human instinct of wanting to survive and having to step over others to do it. But Shiki is essentially seeing them in Drac and Joe's head. This isn't Drac and Joe having a flashback. This is Shiki pretty much pulling the memories out of his head, which is going to be really useful in a lot of ways because it's a mind game that Shiki can do on somebody. So Shiki can do some like weird, obviously always playing some degree of like mental kind of like tactics against somebody. But he's also going to be, in general, if he can control it, anybody that he fights, he's going to know stuff about. Like, there's always like in that idea of like, well, if this character fought this character, there's always there's a variable of whether the character's like, well, do they know about each other or are they going in blind? You know, the idea of like just knowledge on each other. If you run into like stuff like, oh no, they're going in blind. Doesn't matter if Shiki masters this, if he can just like be near somebody and use his gravity to pretty much pull information out of their head and know what they're going to do. So he'll know of like, can I actually beat this person? What do I need to look out for? What's the most dangerous thing that they have that I have to deal with, kind of thing, which is really cool. I like that a lot. It's something as well that could, in a lot of ways, do more for the story on top of that. And just in like a side note, because we have the hero's storyline with that Hiromashima put out, where, you know, he had the crossover between all his characters in his series, that if he wanted to do that, and like completely confirm that like it looks like he already confirmed that like all his series are one multiverse and it's just different timelines and stuff. He could have Shiki use his power to pretty much pull the memories of the characters, so like maybe it's somehow like they know everything from their respective series instead of just that alternate universe, or do something like that where maybe he could be like, oh yeah, I can do this, and bam, you know what's going on now, or something kind of like thing. Or maybe he can put memories into other people's heads instead of just straight taking them, or pulling them towards them. But I thought that was just really cool in general, and how it affects Leaper, I'm guessing it would have something to do with like messing with her memories, so she can remember like if she does it instinctively, like some form of traumatic experience happens where Rebecca's like, oh, you know, it just activated like by chance, by like a freak nature and response that she had. But if he can use his gravity manipulation to pretty much pull that memory in her head, well, maybe that's how they're going to be able to do it, and she's going to be able to do it more frequently. I'm hoping that there's going to be restrictions on it for obvious reasons of like what time travel shenanigans can do to a series, but the fact that Hiromashima is like such a time travel heavy guy, like he's got time shenanigans rather, and time travel really in all of his series, like he always has some form of time stuff going on, that I think he's well prepared enough with time-based stuff that he's not going to just kind of like fumble on this one. I mean, like I said, most of the time when you run into like somebody who's got like does time travel and it falls apart is when they don't have experience on it, or like not enough idea prepped up to where like it could easily run into issues, you know. But it already fits into like not only the fact that, oh, Hiromashima like has lots of experience of time travel based things, but time travel itself is very good, is way more heavily involved in the Eden Zero story than it was in Fairy Tail and Rave Master. But then, like, we get to it, Shiki's, like, prepares up an attack, he charges up all this gravity, and then does this giant lunging, like, it's a very weird punch, because he's, like, draws it back, and then, like, goes forward, but he's twisting it, like, so the fist is upside down. I'm wondering if that would be more of, like, a form of uppercut. I don't know what that kind of punch would be called. I'm not too sure. Either way, it was pretty fucking cool, just in general, seeing that attack go on. And it looks badass. I like the visual effect that Hiromashima put behind it. This Magimech attack, the Meteor Breaker. So I'm guessing like it's going to have the force behind it like a meteor just driving into his opponent. It's this large gravity just induced punch. So you had the Gravity Comet, which he's pretty much just gravity inducer around himself to drop heavy on someone. Now he's pretty much just gravity heavy induced fist, and then gravity launching, propelling himself forward. I like the meteor kind of like effect that it looks like it, where it looks like just this big crashing like pretty much just satellite. Would it be a satellite? But you know what I mean? This big mass of rock plowing through space at high speeds and just goes right through Drac and Joe, completely seemingly destroying all the form around him. I'm wondering if it's like Drac and Joe is out of the form, or if like he's pretty much destroyed his body and this is all that's left. Either way, Shiki now has just completely rendered this dude down, completely rendered him, so he's not going to be able to. He's done. He's absolutely done. The question will be is like what's left in the arc. Like I'm guessing that I think Hiroshima said it was going to end on chapter 100. So 99 will probably be like maybe like we find out more about Drac and Joe, and it'll be like a more character kind of like maybe we get a little bit more about like why he's doing this, maybe find out a little bit more about his backstory, and then like chapter 100 it'll resolve, and the crew will meet back up on Eden Zero and get ready to get out and just like before we go on this next part of Dragon Falls, can we please rest and just like take a day off? But yeah, that was badass. I love that. I really like the new attack. I love the new form. I think it looks really sick, and I can't wait to see like what else Hiroshima like drives towards this. Like what else has he got planned for like Shiki? Because I've talked about it before. I think when you compare like Hiromishima's main 3 characters, I know he's got like he's got like Aki, he's got some smaller characters. I'm hoping Monster Soul gets maybe gets like a continuation or reboot. But when you look at like his 3 main characters, he's got Haru. Haru is way more displayed as like a classical hero than Shiki and Natsu by far. He's way more built to be like a hero. Natsu is more independent. Him and the Fairy Tail Guild, they are inherently good, but they're not afraid to go against pretty much anybody that slanders the guild or is a threat to the guild. They are in a lot of ways, I think, more independent than anything. Whereas Shiki, I've been saying he's kind of like a soft villain in the fact that he's a nice guy, but the difference is like the second you really kind of like get him in a spot where he's uncontrollably mad, he becomes more of a villain. He becomes more of a dangerous, very, very dangerous individual to where he's not like, oh yeah, I'm pissed. It's more of like, like all gloves are off, cold-blooded time, gonna be vicious, gonna be brutal. Like look back at La Liga. He was not gonna beat a Liga and then be like, oh yeah, I defeated you. He was like, if they didn't intervene, if Pino didn't intervene, like he was going to beat him to death. And like that was going to be how that would have went. But yeah, pretty hyped up. I can't wait to see where Hiroshima takes this more. And especially when we remember like the flash forward that like the dream that Rebecca saw that when he was like talking about like the Happy Bot being dead. I'm wondering if he's going to get colder as like the story goes. Like maybe he becomes a little bit more through like experience, like just less happy, a little bit more bummed out, and we'll have to get to a point where he needs to kind of like recollect himself, get back into like a happier state, and just recover from a lot of the shit that's been like laying waste to him since since the story started, and things just probably keep getting more unfortunate for him. But anyway, other than that, comment below, tell me your thoughts about this. Love the new attack, love the new form. I think the ripped kind of like weird drapery is probably one of my favorite parts on him because it looks more like a cloak. It looks more of like just this really cool cloak that he's got on. And I love that. But anyway, other than that though, comment below, thumbs up the video, but from the like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But other than that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.